SIDDHARTHA. Hermann Hesse. Part 1. It's a great book. The Brahmins Sun. In the shadow of the house, in the sun on the riverbank by the boats, in the shadow of the sal tree forest, in the shadow of the fig tree, SIDDHARTHA, the beautiful Brahmin's son, the young falcon, grew up with his friend, the Brahmin's son Govinda. The sun on the riverbank browned his pale shoulders as he bathed, as he performed sacred ablutions, as he performed sacred sacrifices. Shadows flowed in his dark eyes in the mango grove as he played his boys' games, as his mother sang during the sacred sacrifices while his father, the scholar, taught, and during the discourses of the wise men. For a long time now, SIDDHARTHA had taken part in the discourses of the wise men, training in debate with Govinda, training in the art of contemplation with Govinda, and the practice of meditative absorption. He already knew how to say the without sound, the word of words, to speak it soundlessly inward with the in-breath and soundlessly outward with the out-breath, with his mind collected, his brow aglow with the radiance of a clear-thinking intellect. So he already knew how to say the without sound, the word of words, to speak it soundlessly inward with the in-breath and soundlessly outward with the out-breath. So what is that? The O-M. He already knew how to see his being's Atman within him, indestructible, one with the universe. Joy leaped in his father's heart over his brilliant son, so thirsty for knowledge. He saw a great sage and a priest growing in him, a prince among the Brahmins. Bliss leaped in his mother's bosom as she watched him walking, watched him sitting and standing, SIDDHARTHA the strong, the beautiful, moving with his lithe-limbed walk, greeting her with perfect grace. Love stirred in the hearts of the young daughters of the Brahmins when SIDDHARTHA passed through the city streets, with his radiant brow, with his imperial glance, with his slender lips. But his friend, the Brahmin's son Govinda, loved him more than any other. He loved SIDDHARTHA's gaze and his sweet voice. He loved his way of walking and the complete grace of his movements. He loved everything SIDDHARTHA did and said, but most of all, he loved his mind, his elevated, fiery thoughts, his burning will, his lofty inspiration. Govinda knew SIDDHARTHA would never become an ordinary Brahmin, a lazy purveyor of rituals, a greedy dealer in charms, a vain mouther of empty phrases, a base and devious priest, nor would he become a mindless, good sheep in the common herd. Certainly he would not, and Govinda too would not become any of those things. He also would not become a Brahmin like 10,000 others. His desire was to follow SIDDHARTHA, the beloved, the magnificent. If SIDDHARTHA ever became a god, if he ever entered the light, then Govinda would follow him as his friend, as his companion, as his servant, his spear bearer, his shadow. Yes, everyone loved SIDDHARTHA. He aroused joy in everyone. He was a delight to all. But SIDDHARTHA was no joy to himself. He brought no pleasure to himself, walking on the rosy paths of the fig garden, sitting in the bluish shadows of the meditation grove, washing his limbs in the daily baths of purification, performing sacrifices in the deep shade of the mango wood. Perfect in the grace of his gestures, he was beloved of everyone, a joy to all, but still there was no joy in his heart. Dreams came to him in restless thoughts. They flowed in him from the water of the river, glittered from the night stars, melted out of the rays of the sun. Dreams came in a restless mind, rising in the smoke of the offerings, wafting from the verses of the Rig Veda, seeping into him from the teachings of the old Brahmins. Rig Veda, R-I-G-V-E-D-A. SIDDHARTHA had begun to breed discontent within himself. He had begun to feel that his father's love and his mother's love and even the love of his friend Govinda would not bring him enduring happiness, would not bring him contentment and satisfaction, would not be sufficient to his needs. He had begun to sense that his venerable father and his other teachers, the wise Brahmins, had already shared with him the better part of their wisdom. They had already poured their all into his waiting vessel, and the vessel was not full. His mind was not satisfied. His soul was not at peace. His heart was not content. The ritual ablutions, there's that word again, ablutions. The ritual ablutions, A-B-L-U-T-I-O-N-S, were good, but they were water. They did not wash away sins. They did not heal the mind's thirst. They did not resolve the heart's fear. The sacrifices and the invocations of the gods were splendid, but was this all there was? Did sacrifices bring happiness? And what about the gods? Did Prajapati really create the world? Was it not Atman, that the one and only and the all in all? Were the gods not formed things created like you and me and subject to time and permanent? So was it good, a meaningful and supreme act to sacrifice to the gods? To what other should one make offerings? What other should one worship besides that? The one and only Atman, Atman. And where was Atman to be found? Where did it dwell? Where did its eternal heart beat? Where else but in one's own inmost self, the indestructible essence within everyone? But where was this self, this inmost essence, this ultimate principle? It was neither flesh nor bone, neither thought nor consciousness, so the wise men taught. So where was it then? Was there any worthwhile path other than one leading to that, the self, the me, Atman? But nobody taught this path. No one acknowledged it. His father did not, nor the teachers and wise men, nor the sacred liturgy. They knew it all. The Brahmins in their holy books knew everything. They had covered everything and more, the creation of the world, the origin of speech, nutrition, the in-breath and the out-breath, the ordering of the senses, the deeds of the gods. Their knowledge was endless, but what good did it do to know all these things if one did not know the one and only, the most important thing, the only important thing? True, many verses in the holy books to Upanishads, the Samaveda, spoke of this inmost and ultimate essence. Glorious verses, your soul is the whole world. It proclaims in those writings also that in sleep, deep sleep, a person enters his inmost sanctum and dwells in the Atman. These verses contain marvelous wisdom. Everything in them is the knowledge of the wisest of the wise, formulated in magical words, pure as bee-gathered honey. Know the immensity of knowledge that lay preserved there, gathered by countless generations of wise Brahmins, should not be underestimated. But where were the Brahmins, the priests, the sages, or the ascetics who had succeeded not only in knowing this most profound knowledge intellectually, but also living in it? Where were the adepts who had learned the knack of bringing indwelling in the Atman, out of the realm of sleep into that of wakefulness? Who had made it a part of every aspect of life, both word and deed? Siddhartha was acquainted with many venerable Brahmins, his father above all. His father was a pure, a learned, a supremely venerable man, admirable, peaceful, noble in demeanor, pure in his life, wise in his words, refined and elevated in his thought. But even his father, who knew so much, did he live in holy bliss, and had he found contentment? Was he, too, not only a seeker, still thirsting? Did he not have to slake his thirst again and again at the sacred springs, the rites, the books, the discourses of the Brahmins? Why did he, blameless as he was, have to wash away his sins each day, perform purifications each day? Each day again? Was Atman not within him? Did the primordial spring not flow in his own heart? That is what had to be found, the primordial spring, the primordial, Primordial, primordial spring within oneself. One had to become master of that. Anything else was a vain quest, a false direction, a misunderstanding. These were Siddhartha's thoughts. This was his thirst and his pain. He often repeated to himself the words of the Chandogya Upanishad. I guess that's an important person from like a certain book, the Brahmin book maybe. Verily, the name of Brahmin is Satyam. Truly he knows, truly he who knows this enters daily into the heavenly realm. Often the heavenly realm seemed near, but he had never attained it completely, never quenched his ultimate thirst. And of all the wise men he knew and whose teaching he enjoyed, even the wisest of the sages, none of them had attained the heavenly realm completely. None had entirely quenched the eternal thirst. Govinda, said Siddhartha to his friend, Govinda, my friend, come with me under the banyan tree, and we shall practice meditation. They went over to the banyan tree and sat down, Siddhartha in one place, and Govinda 20 paces farther on. As he sat down, prepared to utter the Siddhartha murmured this verse, is the bow, the arrow is the soul. Brahman is the arrow's target. One should strike it without wavering. When the customary amount of time for meditation had passed, Govinda got up. Evening had come. It was time to perform the evening ablutions. He called Siddhartha's name. Siddhartha did not reply. Siddhartha was absorbed, his eyes fixed on a very distant goal, his tongue protruding a bit between his teeth. He did not seem to be breathing. He sat, wrapped in absorption, thinking, his soul like an arrow flying toward Brahman. One day some Shramanas passed through Siddhartha's city, ascetics on pilgrimage, 3 gaunt, lifeless men, neither young nor old, with dust-coated, bleeding shoulders, nearly naked, sun-scorched, isolated and solitary, alien and outcast. misfits, scrawny jackals in the world of humans. A fevered atmosphere of silent fervor, wasting privation, and pitiless self-immolation hung over them. In the evening, after the hour of contemplation, Siddhartha said to Govinda, "Tomorrow morning, my friend Siddhartha will go to the Shramanas. He will become a Shramana." Hearing these words, Govinda paled. He read in his friend's face a resolve as impossible to divert as a bow-shot arrow. At once, in this first glimpse, Govinda saw it. It is starting now. Now Siddhartha is embarking on his path. Now his destiny is taking shape, and with his mind too, and he became pale as a dried-out banana peel. "Siddhartha," he cried, "will your father permit this?" Siddhartha looked over at him like one awakening from sleep. With an arrow's swiftness, he saw in Govinda's soul and read there both fear and surrender. "Govinda," he said softly, "let us not waste words. Tomorrow at dawn I begin the life of a Shramana. Speak no more about it." Siddhartha entered the room where his father was seated on a hemp mat. He moved up behind his father and stood there until his father felt there was somebody behind him. "Is that you?" Siddhartha said, "the Brahmin." Siddhartha said, "With your permission, father, I've come to tell you that tomorrow I must leave your house and go off with the ascetics. I long to become a Shramana. May my father not oppose this." The Brahmin was silent and remained so long. The Brahmin was silent and remained so long that the stars moved and changed their configuration in the little window in the room before the silence came to an end. The son stood mute and motionless, his arms crossed. The father sat mute and motionless on the mat, and the stars moved in the sky. Finally the father said, "It is not fitting for a Brahmin to speak hard and angry with words. Yet in my heart I cannot accept this. Do not let this request cross your lips a second time." The Brahmin got slowly to his feet. Siddhartha remained standing there with his arms crossed. "What are you waiting for?" said his father. "You know," said Siddhartha. Upset, his father left the room and went and lay down in his bed. After an hour, since sleep did not come, the Brahmin got up and began to pace back and forth. He stepped out of the house and looked in through the little window of the room. He saw Siddhartha standing there with crossed arms, still not having moved. His light-colored upper robe shone pale. With apprehension in his heart, the father returned to his bed. After an hour, since sleep did not come to him, the Brahmin got up again, paced back and forth, stepped out in front of the house and saw that the moon had risen. He glanced in through the window. There stood Siddhartha motionless, his arms crossed, with the moonlight playing on his bare shins. Troubled in his heart, the father went back to his bed. As he came back after 1 hour and again after 2 hours, looked through the little window and saw Siddhartha standing there in the moonlight, in the starlight, in the darkness. He came back again hour after hour and looked without speaking into the room, saw the unmoving figure standing, and his heart filled with anger, filled with concern, filled with uncertainty, filled with pain. In the last hour of the night before day broke, he came back again, went into the room, and looked at the youth standing there. The boy looked big to him and alien. "Siddhartha," he said, "what are you waiting for? You know. Are you going to keep standing there till daylight, till noon, till night?" "I'm going to stand here and wait." "You'll get tired, Siddhartha." "I'll get tired." "You'll fall asleep, Siddhartha." "I will not fall asleep." "Oh, did he say I won't get tired?" "You'll get tired, Siddhartha." Siddhartha says, "I'll get tired." "You'll fall asleep, Siddhartha." "I will not fall asleep." "You'll die, Siddhartha." "I will die." "And would you rather die than obey your father?" Siddhartha has always obeyed his father. "So you will give up your idea?" Siddhartha will do what his father tells him. The first daylight shone into the room. The Brahmin saw that Siddhartha's knees were shaking slightly, but he saw no wavering in Siddhartha's face. The eyes were fixed on the distance. Then the father realized that Siddhartha was already no longer home with them, that he already had left them already. The father laid his hand on Siddhartha's shoulder. "You will go off to the forest," he said, "and become a Shramana. If you find happiness in the forest, come back and teach me happiness. If it's a disappointment you find, then come back and we shall again make sacrifices to the gods together. Now go and kiss your mother and tell her where you're going. For me, it's time to go to the river and perform the first ablutions." He took his hand from his son's shoulder and went out. Siddhartha tottered sideways as he tried to take a step. He forced his legs to obey him, bowed to his father, and went to find his mother so he could do as his father had told him. As the wayfarer was leaving the quiet city by first light, walking slowly on his stiff legs, a shadow emerged from behind the last house where it had been crouching and joined him. It was Govinda. "You came," said Siddhartha and smiled. "I came," said Govinda. That was the end of that chapter. Govinda is the friend, and they're Brahmins. But he's going to go with the Shramanas, I think the travelers.